welcome everybody to this webinar on reflecting and describing impact. My name's Janet Grauberg, and I'm one of the hosts for today, and I'm here with Gabriel from FEMPRA, who's the other host and who'll be talking a bit later on. And so this is webinar 6 in a free webinar series hosted by the National Leaving Care Benchmarking Forum and the Esby Fairbairn Foundation. Thank you to both of them. And the objectives of this program of webinar is to share the learning from a peer learning program that we did together with a program of 12 local authorities and 3 charities funded by the Esme Fairbairn Foundation now over a year ago. And the program was about supporting participants to take practical steps in relational practice with young people with care experience. And as a result of that program, we generated a whole pile of case studies and resources and learnings which we're sharing. And the reason we're doing some webinars is because we felt that just putting stuff on a website, which is normally what happens with case studies and resources, did not feel a very relational way to go forward. So there are resources on a website, and Gabriel's just popped the link in the chat, and we'll send the link out to everyone together with the slides after today. But today is a way of us, a quick way of us introducing some of the resources. And there's 2 blogs. Blog 7, which is about resources to help you melt the ice with colleagues and reflect together, or to help you work with young people where you want to reflect with them. And then blog 8, which introduces storytelling as a valid approach to impact measurement, and it illustrates some of the methods you can do that. So we'll be in plenary to start with, and then we'll go on to breakout discussions. So I'm going to start just by introducing some of the resources in blog 7, which is about reflection. And here's the first exercise, on board the pirate ship. So this is one of the resources that we talk about in the blog, and we would like to get you to do it now. Think about where you are in relation to something you're working on. So a project, or something you're trying to get off the ground, or just a conversation you're in with colleagues. Which number are you, or which number most closely represents where you are in that conversation? So look at the pirate ship picture, and then think about whether you are number 20, sitting on a lovely desert island there, whether you're number 12, left behind, running to catch the ship, whether you're number 1, way up there in the above the crow's nest. And then Gabriel's going to launch a poll, and we'll see where people think they are. So just to think about where you are on the pirate ship of your project. Okay, so poll is go. And if you're happy to say a few words about where you are on the pirate ship, just put yes in the chat, and I'll come to you and you can explain a bit about where you are. Claire, I think you were the first to yes. Would you like to explain while everybody else is doing their polling?
Yep, sure. Yeah, I put 15 as I joined Daybreak. We deliver family groups conferences across various different contract sites. I joined in October, and I think because of my background as a systemic psychotherapist, I suppose I feel a bit like I'm pushing the ship, because I feel that I need to bring quite a lot of new practices, ideas, and bring it in collaboratively, because I feel that the independent coordinators have maybe not had a lot of kind of relevant CPD because they, the IR35, they're individuals. We need to not cross this line, but I also feel FGCs in general, maybe some of the relational practice hasn't necessarily been there as much as I think it
Mhm.
needs to be. And I've got quite a lot of work, like trying to get them to be reflexive, getting them to think about their social graces. So I feel a bit like I'm pushing
Pushing.
a big ship. So is where I'm at.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Claire. Thank you for sharing. And Grace, you were the next one to yes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, number eight. I
Mm.
chose number eight because it looks to me like a teamwork. And teamwork for us, I'm a conference reviewing officer, so I'm part of a big group of conference reviewing officers, and we all work together and reflect. We have often supervisions and meetings together to reflect in our journey and how we can improve things for the families and the young people we work with, and we learn from practice. We are constantly bringing different ideas and different resources and studies, so to make sure that we make always the right decisions. So for me is about reflecting together what we are doing right, what we are doing wrong, what can be improved. Yeah, so I
Mm.
feel it's on number eight.
Very good. Thank you. And then I'll just take one more. I think Harriet, you were the next to yes.
Hiya. Yeah, so I'm a researcher, and I've had feedback on an article that was about kind of involving parents with lived experience in our research, and I'm trying to sort of muster up the motivation to address all of the comments, and I've only got quite a short
Oh.
time, but I feel like today especially I've sort of set myself the task of starting, and it's
So
that
what number
kind
were
of
you?
I'm eight. I'm
You're
also
also
eight.
eight.
I
Okay.
feel like I'm
Okay.
kind of really trying to sort of get up the effort to sort of get things started, but it's feeling like quite a struggle today.
So you're heaving away at that anchor, and that looks like that's a big task. Okay. Uh, any other reflections? I think Ange, you might have been the one more yes, and then we'll move on. Ange, Anger. Right, disappeared. Good. No problem. So, this is we use this metaphor of a pirate ship at the end of our program to help people think about where they were in relation to what they'd learned on the program and where they wanted to go next. And it was a really helpful metaphor to help us think about us in relation to others, um, and where we were and where we wanted to be. Um, uh, and in the blog, there are other metaphors that you might find helpful. So there's the using the petals and the middle of a flower to help think about what's unique and what's shared. There's using a river to describe your flow from where you started to where you are now, which you can do in a team or as an individual exercise, and a reflection tool called the 4 Fs, which I have often used. And Gabriel and I've been reflecting on why metaphors are helpful in helping to have us reflect. And as we heard in those answers, they offer insights into complex thought patterns and emotions, things that we might not be able to put into words ourselves. And they are creative conversation starters as they stand in for the real thing, as they allow us to describe that something is like something else, and to stretch our imagination and our language. And finally, they're a bit of fun. It's much easier to and much more fun to say, I feel like someone pulling an anchor or pushing the boat, than to describe the stress of the task. So I hope that you will have a look at the blog. There's lots of resources there about these and other places where you can get metaphors to help you reflect on how you're working together. So over to Gabriel to talk about relational evaluation.
Yes, thanks, Janet. We obviously found that it's not just important to reflect together on a kind of casual basis, perhaps using metaphor and using creative, imaginative ways of doing so, but that actually also an evaluation of, say, a whole project or a whole program needs to be relational if we're talking about relational practice. So we need to have evaluation approaches that really prioritize relationships, that really focus on storytellings and give us that opportunity to listen deeply. And so one of the ones that we particularly liked in the program is called Most Significant Change. And it's a very well-established evaluation method that has been widely used across a whole range of different settings to kind of really gather and analyze personal narratives to understand impact. Importantly, it focuses on the things that are the most meaningful experiences for different participants and structures the kind of conversation and exploration and action around that. And so it's one of the methods that is kind of been increasingly recognized, that these kinds of qualitative evaluation methods are highly valuable because they offer insights that we can't get by merely looking at hard data, such as statistics that we might be gathering. So how does Most Significant Change work as a method? It starts by collecting stories from different stakeholders. So that could be a group of young people, could be a group of practitioners, it could be some of the senior managers perhaps, or other professionals involved in those young people's lives. And you collect stories from each of those. Each group of stakeholders then selects one story from theirs that is the most significant one in the second part. Then the different stakeholders get into dialogue with each other, share the stories they've selected respectively, and talk a little bit about why that's so significant to them. The fourth part is really reflecting and learning from each other. So it gives that opportunity through that dialogue to kind of see things from different people's perspectives, and therefore get a much more well-rounded picture of what was actually going on, what was important to different stakeholders, and what was the thing that had the lasting impact for them. And finally, it's about acting on those findings and communicating them back to everybody who was involved. So it's very much not just about having a nice conversation with everybody, but actually it is also very much connected to action. The bit about like, so what are we going to do now that we know a little bit more about the things that were meaningful and important and significant to each of us? So there is a lot more on the blog as well about more significant change, in particular a couple of projects that have used it, including the Esme Fairbairn Foundation's Leaving Care program did an evaluation using MSc. There's also the DEEP project, which stands for Developing Evidence-Enriched Practice, which has used most significant change alongside other kind of learning dialogue method. And there's also a framework that's been developed by Blue Cabin in collaboration with TALT, which stands for There's an Alternative. And they've developed a relational evaluation framework as well that is very much focused on creative exploration of what mattered to the care experienced young people in the projects that Blue Cabin run. So you can have a look at all of that, and hopefully that gives you even more confidence that it's important to use storytelling methods and to be really creative about how we use them as well, because we can actually complement them as well with more imaginative or creative approaches as well, using photography or using music or art, dance, etc., to give young people even more opportunities to kind of express the things that have really mattered and that are key to their story. What we'd like to give you a chance to do next is to get a little bit into dialogue with each other. So we'll put you into breakout rooms in a moment with a couple of other people to explore two questions. The first is, how are you using stories in your work? So maybe you're using them at the moment to describe the impact of what you're doing. And secondly, could you use storytelling approaches more widely or in a more structured way as part of demonstrating impact? So we hope you had a great conversation and got to meet some new people and had a good exchange about maybe the role of metaphor or what you do in reflection or how you're using story in your own practice, and any ideas you might have for using storytelling approaches more widely. If there's anything from your conversation, any kind of nuggets of wisdom that you would like to share, then just put yes in the chat and we'll come to the first two people. Would be happy to share anything. Doesn't even need to be wisdom for that matter. Anything that you found really interesting that you want to just share with us, because maybe you think like actually more people should know about this. Share some success stories or whatever it is, anything that you would like to share from your conversation. Just put yes in the chat and then we'll come to you. So let's see if there's anybody willing to just give us a little bit of an insight into what you were talking about. Are you using stories in your work? If so, how are you using them? Emma, can I come to you?
First of all, what came to my mind was how different we all use that type of practice, you know, because obviously I'm a lifelong needs coordinator. There was lots of different people who were using that type of approach, but in different ways. So obviously for me, I spoke about direct work that I've completed with children and telling their stories that way. So yeah, that's all I can say really.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that. And Bärbel, can we come to you?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Gabriel. I suppose just from a different perspective, and I know we had a couple of conversations there in the breakout room. I currently I'm involved in a couple of different projects. I suppose it's to create new services, and I suppose the storytelling approach we would use to show the already kind of the impact or what impact we can make with a new project. And sometimes it's about obtaining funding for a project, or else to attract, I suppose, just one example, we are we have produced videos of storytelling with the young people and their carers to attract new carers to come on board with us currently. So things like that, so that I suppose the life stories and the willingness, obviously, for sharing and in a very supportive manner can be utilized as opposed to, how will I say, to develop further, to increase or improve services as well. So from that perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example. And obviously it gives young people a voice in that process, an opportunity to kind of talk about what really mattered to them and what they want to see more of, or what they think can be even better. So that sense of agency is really, really important in storytelling. I think the other bit as well is that very often, and you might have touched on that, Bärbel, as well, that when we use approaches like storytelling or videos or photography, the process of developing that itself is really relational and kind of really manages to, you know, strengthen, deepen relationships, show that we value relationships in a way that just giving out a survey or an evaluation form at the end of a session or at the end of a project just doesn't do, right? So that's why we feel like when we're serious about relational practice, we also need to make sure that all our methods are really congruent with that. Ray, can I just come to you there as well? And thanks for.
Yeah, it may be really old hat, but I've often found if I'm prepared and if I'm a leaving care worker, and quite often I have to transport young people to appointments or helping them move house. I always find when you're sitting in the car, both looking forward, it's much easier to communicate. And if you have something ready, that's quite a rich environment to get it done, because it's not confrontational. It's, you know, it's a conversation as you're going along. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives you something else to focus on that enables you to just have a conversation like two normal people would when they're in the car.
Yeah.
Yeah. Washing up is another good opportunity for a conversation, again, because you're not looking at each other and you're doing something else, but you're, you know, you might be there for a long time if you're washing up after a group meal or something like that. Thank you.
Yeah. And again, I think what often happens in those situations is that we just give the other person the time to kind of formulate and make sense and articulate their story of what they want to say on their terms without us kind of, you know, asking the question that we need to ask in an assessment form or whatever it is. It's not that we kind of set the tone of like, these are the things I need to find out in the evaluation because they're important to me, but actually here's the space for you to tell me what's important to you on your own term, in your own time. And that's incredibly powerful. So thanks for making that point. Janet.
Thank you. So we're coming to the end of the session. So just like to think about the discussion you had in your group about stories or the thoughts that you had about reflection and do some action planning. So we're going to share the good old pirate ship again and ask you to think about, in relation to either the project that you were working on or the discussion that you had, or anything else that struck you, what number would you like to be? Would you like to be on that desert island? Would you like to be at the top of the pole waving? Would you like to be sliding down with a kite? What would you like? Where would you like to be in relation to your project? And then just have a think, practically speaking, about how are you going to make sure you take that action? We all know that it is really difficult. We've had a good conversation, had some thoughts in this session, and as soon as we get back to our inboxes or our phones, there'll be somebody asking us to do something and it'll all go out of our minds. So what is going to help you do the action that you wanted to take? Create a calendar entry, or pick a post-it note and stick it to your computer, or send yourself an email. just take that action. If you'd like to post anything about actions in the chat, feel free. If that's helping you reinforce what you want, this is really for you rather than us. So I'm just going to pause a second while we think about actions.
In the
Lovely.
meantime, our results are in from the poll. I don't know if you can see that. We have quite a few people up there in the crow's nest, is where they want to be. Quite a few people who want to be steering the pirate ship. Very interesting. We have nobody who wants to shoot a cannon into the boat. 2 people who want to be on the island, just chilling.
Roll on, Summer. Thank you all. Thank you for popping your actions in the chat, and thank you for coming today. I have just posted in the chat the link to that the final lunchtime webinar in this series, which is next month, Wednesday, the 19th of March, same time. Please register if you haven't yet registered. We look forward to seeing you. And we'll be thinking about, at that session, we'll be thinking about the context for the work and how we might use that to work in a more relational way. And we'll be signposting you to a number of the different sort of websites and toolkits that we have found that we have found useful. So it should be a really good one, and I'm just posting the link again in the chat. Thank you to everyone who's come. We will send round the materials from this webinar to everyone who's come. And in response to Bethany's request, the recordings of the previous webinars are not yet up on the website, but they will be in due course. We're going to curate them all when we've finished. And we'll contact everybody at that point. Thanks for all for coming. See you next time.